Thank you all very much for coming. It's a really good turnout. I'm very pleased. My name is Ken Huff, and I'm the Executive Director of the Santa Barbara County Action Network. And many of you I know are familiar with us. Some of you are members. Some of my board members are here. Joanne Marmolejo is a board member, taking names on the way in. Hazel Tavalis is a board member over here. Dick Hall. And Jerry Connor, who's our North County Vice President, and therefore my boss today. All right. And then I want to thank also some of our elected officials who are here, hopefully all of them. Mayor Alice Patino over there. Terry Zuniga, who's helping at the sign-in desk. And we have a planning commissioner. Etta Waterfield is here. And I think, hope I didn't miss anybody. So the Santa Barbara County Action Network, as you may know, it's a nonprofit membership organization. We work to promote economic justice, preserve open space and ag land, and lobby for efficient transportation. And we try to bring together environmental interests and social equity interests. That's why we were formed, and also to get a presence for those interests in the North County. And oil extraction sometimes has some negative impacts on people who don't have a voice, who are poor or of color. But sometimes, as we'll hear today from Calvin Tillman, it may directly impact somebody who's even the mayor of the city. So when I heard he was coming to town and asked if would we be up for sponsoring his presentation, I was really excited to do so because I've seen Gasland and Gasland 2, and Calvin's testimony in those films was among the most compelling in those films. And I've read Shale Field Stories, this 40 or so page booklet, which will be available if you want a copy today. And his write-up is in there, as is one by the subsequent mayor of Dish, Texas as well, and very, very compelling testimony. So I was excited to have Calvin here and to sponsor. It's hard for a lot of people to get time off in the middle of the day and come on a weekday at noon, so although it's a great turnout considering that. But we want to make sure this presentation and discussion is available to others, and so we've got Stephen Paschke is our videographer today, and we're going to have the video of the whole thing online, and you'll be able to see it there or download it, and we're going to run it on Santa Maria Community TV as well. And I want to introduce also Jeannie Sparks, our communications manager over by the front desk, who happens to be on the Santa Maria Community TV Commission.
And I just want to mention that we have another SB County board member here who we did properly notice. Nancy Johnson's here. Thank you for coming.
Thank you, Jeannie. Sorry, Nancy. All right, so there's some expense related to having this videotaped and put on the TV, and so that's why we're taking donations today. If you'd be so inclined, that would be great. The format for today, Calvin's going to talk for 35 or 40 minutes. And we've got index cards at the front table, and especially with the crowd of this size, I think it'll be the most efficient if you have questions for him to put it on a card, and Jeannie or others from the front table will collect those, and then either Jeannie or I will read the questions, Calvin will respond. And Jeannie's passing out cards now. Okay, and then, one of the reasons why this is a timely topic for us is that we have Measure P on the ballot this November, and hopefully everybody's aware of Measure P. Rebecca Clausen from the Santa Barbara Water Guardians is here, and she's got a sign-in sheet up at the front table if you want to volunteer for that effort. Please sign there. And then also, there's an organization in town called SODA 9, and that stands for Stop Oil Development Area 9. And Walter Taylor is there, and Walter is the leader of that, as well as a member of SB Can. And Walter has packets that include shale field stories and a few other things, including the Measure P ordinance itself and some articles. And so he's got copies of that if you're interested, see him after. And the one thing I didn't want to drop, my little, oh, well, okay. So Calvin Tillman was the mayor of Dish, Texas. He was on the council for a couple of years before a 4-year term as mayor. And he's going to tell his story. I'm not going to try to tell any of it because he's ready. I'm ready to introduce Calvin Tillman. Please welcome him.
Thank you. Hopefully everybody can hear me. I've got a couple of microphones going here, so hopefully everybody can hear me. I'm getting some feedback here. So, a little bit more about myself. I didn't actually grow up in Texas. I grew up in Oklahoma, and I actually grew up in the middle of an oil field. My father, who worked for the airlines, on the weekends would go out for extra money, and he would work on the pump jacks. Back in those days, the pump jacks were powered by combustion engines. They weren't electric. So he would go out and work on those engines. So literally from the time that I was walking, I was on a pad of an oil well. When we moved to Texas about 12 years ago, there was some activity going on. The slick water fracturing that they're using in most of the shale plays now was actually developed about 15 miles to the west of Dish by George Mitchell in the late 90s. And so there was some activity going on when we moved there. Of course, after 2000, 2001, they started the horizontal drilling, and then things really exploded in our area. So I wasn't unaccustomed to oil and gas development when moving to Dish. And so I think that's important to frame that, frame my background, frame where I come from. As was stated, I spent 4 years as mayor. I moved from Dish in 2011, moved to a little town called Aubrey, about 25 miles away. I'll get into that a little bit more. I don't get paid for this. I actually don't even get reimbursed for my expenses for this particular trip. I came out here a couple of months ago. I have an organization that I co-founded called Shale Test. We're affiliated with Earthworks. We came out here and we did some work with John from Earthworks, who's in the back there, and he's the coordinator for this area. And I really felt that maybe it might benefit the folks out here for me to come back. And so I paid my own way out here, paying my own expenses, just to frame that for you also. And so, has anybody seen Gasland? Most of the folks have seen Gasland or Gasland 2. So my story is outlined in there. There's also a write-up in the Shale Field Stories about my family. I'm going to touch a little bit on that today, but that's not the main point of my presentation. I'll get into the main point of my presentation, but you'll find a lot of folks who come around and tell the stories, and they have very compelling stories. And I've traveled around the United States and also over to Europe and given this same similar presentation. And so, frankly, a lot of places that I've been to, I've seen stories a lot worse than the one that I'm going to share with you today. And so I'll talk a little bit about that. When I tell people that I'm the mayor or was the former mayor of Dish, they always ask, well, where exactly is Dish? And so this is an aerial view of Dish. This is from Google Maps. I would encourage you to go and take a look at this when you get home. This isn't photoshopped. This is exactly what you'll pull up on Google Maps. Now, each one of those little white dots is a natural gas, either well site or processing facility or something of the sort related to the oil and gas industry. So each one of those little dots, if you pan north, it's actually a lot denser than it is here. This is still being developed. So this isn't fully developed yet. So you take a state like California, there's not going to be tens of wells. There's not going to be hundreds of wells. There's not going to be thousands of wells. There's going to be tens of thousands of wells, if not hundreds of thousands of wells. So this is 10 years in the making, something to that effect. So this is what you can look forward to 10 years from the time that it starts developing. Again, this isn't Photoshop. You can go to Google Maps, look at this. If you do happen to go to Google Maps, pan north. Like I said, it's a lot denser if you move north. Where that A is, that's supposed to be the center of town. That's actually my driveway from the house I owned in Dish. So the house is right there. This was the huge compressor complex that was installed, and our prevailing winds come from this direction. Again, I encourage you to go to Google Maps, look at this. You can see exactly what I'm showing you. So Dish is located about 25 miles directly north of downtown Fort Worth, Texas. For those of you who watch NASCAR, I could see Texas Motor Speedway from my front porch in Dish. It was about 5 miles away. We were located just outside of the edge of the urban sprawl. It was a bedroom community, 2 square miles, a couple of hundred people. We had some development just outside of our borders, so the community that we served was around 500 or so in the general community. But very small rural area. In Dish, most people had at least 1 acre of land. That was that was what kind of made us stand out from other communities, is that we had a minimum 1 acre lot size. So everybody had at least 1 acre. I had 6 acres myself, horses, that sort of stuff. So most of the people who lived in Dish had the same sort of thing. I know that there's some horses around here that we saw driving up here, so you guys are probably familiar with the kind of community that we were. So since we were just outside of the urban sprawl, we became a very popular route for natural gas pipelines, transporting natural gas from the Barnett Shale out to the rest of the country. And so all of these seemed to converge right on Dish. So we had 11 large high-pressure transmission lines that run through our community. And to facilitate that, we had the huge bank of compressor stations. These compressor stations went from anywhere from about 700 horsepower up to 3,500 horsepower. So these are huge engines. We also had the processing equipment, all the from the natural gas, and to make it doesn't come out of the ground as the cleanest burning hydrocarbon. It has to go through a process. It also has to get odorized. And so everything from natural gas processing, from the time it comes out of the ground to the time it's ready for your kitchen stove, all of that happened in our little community. Every single part of that process happened in our community. Just outside of our corporate limits, once we put in our ordinance, the industry went just outside of our corporate limits and drilled under the town. So we had a significant amount of wells around the outskirts of our community. From my home in Dish, if you drew a mile circle, there was probably 100 wells, something to that effect. So significant density. Every one of those wells that isn't drilled, that's profit that's not received. So this is an aerial view of Dish. This is the compressor facility that I was talking about right here. That's about a quarter mile across there. That's probably about 40 acres of land. This is also a facility that's associated with this. There was my home right there. How would you like that in your backyard? When activity like this comes to town, this has to be in somebody's backyard. If it's not natural gas, if it's oil, there's still going to be something like this in somebody's backyard. May not be yours, but it will be somebody's. And there's Dish kind of in the background there. Our town hall building was up here. There's a little subdivision. This was actually an airport, a little recreational airport that had a few airplanes there. Been there for years and years and years. This is another view. This is the person who lives immediately to the east of the facility. He borders the facility. Anybody see anything strange about those trees? They're dead. As the facility began to grow, the odor from the facility began to get stronger and stronger and stronger. Then we noticed that all of the trees around the facility were dying. Now, if you look in the background, those trees got leaves on them. That's off in the distance. So this made us think that maybe there's something a little more than just odor. So about this same time, has anybody seen a movie called Split Estate? It's about oil and gas development in the West. It talks about, the separate mineral interest from the surface interest, and how basically you're along for the ride. But many of the people who were affected by this activity were getting nosebleeds. And they kept saying this over and over and over again. And Deborah Anderson was the lady who did the movie. And she did it great because it just went over and over and over and over again. Now, when me and my wife were watching that, something clicked. Our children had been having a lot of nosebleeds. So you start doing a little research, you might be getting into a dangerous area. So we chose to move. So in March 2011, we moved from Dish. We moved about 25 miles away. So a little town called Aubrey, like I mentioned. And immediately, the nosebleeds stopped. Now these weren't nosebleeds. I got 2 boys and a little girl now. But these weren't the kind of nosebleeds that little boys get from playing. These were nosebleeds that they were getting at night when they were sleeping. Strangely enough, they seemed to only come when the odor was the strongest. People can say, well, I got nosebleeds when I was a kid. Hey, you do whatever you have to do in your life. But we had to make the decision to move. Because we didn't want to be sitting in front of the doctor and getting that talk. People have to make their own decisions on that. We made the right decision. My eldest son was born 10 weeks premature, and he's had asthma his entire life. And every single day of his life that we lived in Dish, he had to have a nebulizer treatment. Immediately, That stopped. Anecdotal? I don't think so. I said, you have to make your own decisions. But there was enough there to let us know we made the right decision. I was able to sell my house. Took a loss. I was able to absorb that. I'm one of the lucky ones. Grab one of these books. Grab one of these books on your way out and read about some of these people. Because their kids are still getting nosebleeds. Their kids are still having impacts. And they can't move. They're upside down in their mortgage. And they can't absorb the hit that they would have to take to move. I'm the lucky one. I know some of these people personally. I've talked to some of these people. You get into a situation where something like I just showed you shows up in your backyard. Your property value plummets. Who on earth is going to buy that? Nobody's going to buy it at a reasonable price. So then you're stuck. You can walk away from something you've invested your life savings into. You either throw the keys in, walk away, or you stay there and you try and fight. Or you can file suit, which puts you 5 years into the court system. None of that stuff goes fast. And you're run through the mill. And the industry attacks you. And they discredit you. And they attack your character. In the meanwhile, your children are still having the health effects. And then guess what? They show up with the settlement. This can all go away. We'll give you the money to get you out of this mess. All you have to sign is this non-disclosure agreement. And you can never talk about anything that has to do with the oil and gas industry. Maybe even your children can't even talk about it. Many people have done that. Many people can't talk. Josh emphasized that in Gasland too, for those of you who've seen that. There's a lot of people out there who were put in that position. I was fortunate. I took a hit on my house, but I was fortunate. I got my family out, and I can still talk. I still have my word. A lot of people don't. What would it take for you to move? What would it take for you to uproot your family? What would it take for you to walk away from everything that you put your life savings and your heart and soul into? Maybe from some of the folks in this room, maybe you've had your house paid for a long time. Maybe you've invested everything into your home. What would it take you to walk away from that? I was a homeowner. I built my dream home. I built my property. I had my horses for my children. Most people in this room have built something like that. I was the mayor of the town. I built the park. I built the library. I helped bring a community together. I worked with all of the other area officials to deal with area issues. It was hard for me to walk away. I probably stayed longer than I should have. I stayed longer than was probably the smart thing for me to do. God bless, my family's doing well. I'm very fortunate for that. Those are things that you need to think about. What would it take? What would it take for you to just move, go to a different town, take your kids away from their friends? You move away from your friends, your support structure. Dish was a small community. I wasn't just a mayor there. Those were my friends and extended family. You have to think about that. Because like I said, it's going to be in somebody's backyard. Maybe yours, maybe not. When I moved from Dish, one of the things that got us some relief in Dish and got us some action is that we did air monitoring. Some of you have seen Gasland. They emphasize that in Gasland. A lot of times, this activity starts in the poorest areas. The people who are most unlikely to be able to defend themselves. And so, me and Tim Ruggiero, who was another affected property owner who was gagged with a non-disclosure agreement, started Shale Test. And we have been very fortunate in Shale Test. We have technology that rivals most regulatory agencies. We have technology that's equivalent to Dogger, is that what they call it? Your oversight group, your watchdog. And so one of the reasons that I came out here is that I was out here, like I said, with John, and I seen some things. We were doing some camera work with a gas finder camera. Gas finder cameras are made by FLIR, but FLIR is infrared, shows heat. Gas finder is specifically designed to see volatile organic compounds. And there's about 13 chemicals that it will detect, the one that we've got. We managed to have one of these anonymously donated to us. And we share that with groups like Earthworks. So me and John have done some filming. John just had the camera this past week. It's now moved out back west or back east so that they can use it. So we allow other groups to use the camera. I'm going to show you some footage from that I think is pretty important for you to see. So this is Tim. This is my partner. Again, Shale Test is a nonprofit organization. We've just recently hired an employee, but for the most part, we've all been all volunteer. So we don't get paid for that either. So there's the camera. New, these cameras are about $85,000. We picked one up that was used, so we got it for significantly less than that. The newer cameras are more like a camcorder. They have the little thing that flips out. And the internal recording device, we have to have an external recording device. So it's not as convenient, but for the price break, that's pretty considerable. Again, it allows you to see VOCs. Some folks in the industry want to say that's just steam. It's not just steam, and we've got a pretty good illustration of that I'm going to show you. So I'm probably going to have to walk back here. This is actually in Fort Worth, Texas. This is just north of downtown Fort Worth, Texas. This is at a city park. Now, we've got a regular camcorder that we're sticking in the lens. So there's the before, there's the after. You can see that's coming out. Now, I'm looking out the windshield of the vehicle that we're in. And he's going to pan over there in just a minute, and I'm going to show you what's there. I noticed that there was a playground right there. And this is a lower income neighborhood, like I said, just directly north of downtown Fort Worth. As you've seen him pan across there, you can see downtown Fort Worth. It takes him a second to get focused here. This footage was actually used in Gasland 2. I don't know if you remember that. That's stuff you can't see with the naked eye. So we use this to know where we need to take air samples from. And we do post some of those up on our website at shelltest.org. So that's Texas, right? California has very stringent environmental regulations, right? So this kind of stuff wouldn't happen here, right?
Or would it?
This is downtown Bakersfield. Guess what? It is happening here. Same sort of stuff. The polarity in the camera is different. Same thing. This was right next to an apartment complex. Right next to a radio station. There was a like shopping center. There was some medical stuff right around there, doctor's offices, things like that. We sat there for probably an hour or two. Steady stream. Every time you looked at it. I'd bet you lunch, if we went back there today, we'd see the same thing. Still doing the same thing. We also found some others, but obviously I can't show you 2 or 3 hours worth of video footage. But I thought this was pretty important to show you that it's happening here, and it's happening here right now. Why is that important? Because someone's going to stand up and go, that ain't going to happen in California. We're not like you people in Texas. It will happen. That same picture has played out in every place that I've been. You're not immune from that. In Dish, where I was at, I did not have any activity on my property. All of it was trespassed onto my property. I went out and built my dream, and they put in this massive complex that made it to where I couldn't use my property for what I bought the property for. I could no longer peacefully enjoy my property that I'd spent my life savings on. So what happens if you do nothing? There's probably a Rangers-Angels game on tonight. Go watch that. It's a whole lot easier to stick your head in the sand and say, this isn't a problem. It's a whole lot easier to worry about the Rangers winning the division. That's a lot easier to worry about than this stuff.
I'll answer that question. For evil to prevail is for good men to do nothing.
Absolutely. You have to get involved. You have to do something.
Yep.
What's the answer? I don't know. If if you join this group, if you guys lobby, if you guys talk to your local officials, if you guys talk to your state legislature, if you guys go and follow the governor around and hold signs, what will happen? I don't know the answer to that. I don't know what happens if you get involved and you stay involved. I know what happens if you do nothing, because it happened to me. I know what happens when you do nothing, because it happened to these people. The Rangers aren't looking good this year. Maybe the Angels got a shot. Or Oakland. Are you guys Oakland or Angels fans? If you do nothing, maybe your picture will be in here. California is the land of movie stars. If you do nothing, maybe you get to be in a movie. The kind of movies that I'm in ain't the kind of movies you want to be in. I'm not a movie star, I'm a subject. Maybe you get to be a subject in one of these documentaries. That's what's going to happen if you do nothing. You have to get involved. How popular do you think it was for an elected official in Texas to speak out against the oil and gas industry? How popular do you think that was? I talked to other officials. They had the same concerns. You know what they said? It's the oil and gas industry. They own us. They own the state. You're never going to make any difference. Obviously, I didn't listen. I think we've made a difference. I think we're still making a difference. One person can make a difference. Together we bargain, divided we beg. Get involved, stay involved. Take your government back. You have some local officials in this room. I'm ecstatic that they showed up. But there's no one in this room who's not qualified to be a public official. Every single person in this room is qualified to do that. Every single person in this room is qualified to be in your state legislature. Every single person in this room is qualified to go to Congress in Washington. That's how our government was designed. We weren't supposed to have career politicians. We were supposed to have normal people go do their time. It's time to get involved and take it back. The consequences are right here. It's here for you to read. You can go home and you can watch the Rangers beat the Angels tonight. But this is still going to be here. The template is there. Every single place that this goes on, the same story. The same story happens. And it's all in this book. All these people, they're from different places. They're from Texas. They're from Wyoming. They're from Pennsylvania. All across the United States. You can stick your head in the sand or you can get involved. There's a quote that I like. And it's up on my website. It's from Theodore Roosevelt. It's not the critic who counts, not the man who points out how the strong man stumbles or where the doer of deeds could have done them better. The credit belongs to the man who's actually in the arena, whose face is marred by dust and sweat and blood, who strives valiantly, who errs, who comes up short again and again, because there is no effort without error and shortcoming. But who does actually strive to do the deeds, who knows the great enthusiasms, the great devotions, who spends himself in a worthy cause, who at the best knows in the end the triumph of high achievement, and who at the worst, if he fails, at least fails while daring greatly, so that his place shall never be with those cold and timid souls who neither know victory nor defeat. I don't know what happens if you get involved. I know what happens if you don't. The consequences are too great. You have a beautiful area here. You have an area that people want to come to. That's all going to change. You have to get involved. You have to strive to make a difference. Do you think I won every battle? I lost a lot of battles. I lost a lot of battles when trying to protect the people who elected me. I walked away licking my wounds a lot of times. But every once in a while, I'd chink that armor. Every once in a while, I'd gain a little ground. And I never gave up. Still haven't given up. One person can make a difference if you choose to. This is a huge industry. They have a lot of money. The people who show up at your meetings from the industry, they're getting paid to be there. For the most part, we're not. And if we are, ain't getting paid very much. Did you hear the conspiracy? Did you hear the conspiracy in Denton, Texas? Denton has the local initiative to put a ban on fracking inside of its corporate limits. So the Railroad Commission, or the head of the Railroad Commission, which the Railroad Commission regulates the oil and gas industry in Texas. Most people don't know that. Not sure the Railroad Commission actually knows that, but they regulate the oil and gas industry. So they tried to draw this correlation that the Denton people was secretly being funded by Russia. I know the people in Denton, and they don't have any money. The only money that they have is the very little that they put in themselves. We don't do what we do for money. And that's the difference. That makes all the difference. A quick story about how you can make a difference. I go down every Wednesday during the legislative session. I get up about 3:30 in the morning. I leave my house. I meet John's co-worker, Sharon Wilson from Texas. And we drive down to Austin because the Committee for Energy and Natural Resources meets every Wednesday. So basically every Wednesday during the legislative session, which fortunately in Texas is every other year. So they only meet for about 6 weeks every other year. So for that 6 weeks, every Wednesday, me and Sharon drive down to Austin to testify on the various bills, to lobby on bills that we're trying to get passed, etc. There was a bill, not this past legislative session, but the legislative session before that, that dealt with trespass. The only thing you can sue for in Texas is trespass and nuisance. Can't sue for being poisoned. Can't sue for your kid getting nosebleeds. Trespass and nuisance, which there was recently a $3 million settlement in Texas. So there was a bill that would have taken away the ability to hold the industry accountable for trespass and nuisance. I adamantly opposed it. It was in the Senate. So I tried to call the senator who was carrying the bill, who sponsored the bill. His name was Troy Frazier. He was number 3 in the state. He was the head of the Senate. So you have Perry, who's the governor. You have Dewhurst, who's the lieutenant governor. And then Troy Frazier. So he was the number 3 most powerful person in the state as far as the government goes. Wouldn't return my calls. His staff said, you know, you're not in our district. He's out in the Marble Falls district, just west of Austin. I wasn't in his district, so he didn't care. So I paid $95. I took out an ad in his local newspaper. Simply, it was just a simple message. Troy Frazier is destroying private property rights in the state of Texas. Please call him to oppose this bill. Had the bill number. Guess who called me the next day? Troy called me personally. Guess what happened? Language in the bill got changed. There were some shenanigans at the end where they tried to insert the language back in. The only person who could undo what was done was Troy Frazier. And he did. Did it take me $1 million? It took me $95. This last legislative session, that facility that I showed you, that's actually a pipeline. Because in Texas, the appurtenances to pipelines are part of the pipeline. So compressors, dehydrators, anything that go along with the pipeline are considered part of the pipeline. Local municipalities have very limited influence on what happens with pipeline and pipeline appurtenances. So we went down to testify. There was a bill that would have taken away all local municipality authority. Right now it's very limited. You can require them to be enclosed. You can require noise abatement. You can require some aesthetics. The odors, you can force them to do some mitigation there. They were taking all that away. So I went down and gave my very passionate testimony. And then I called the committee clerk the next day, and she told me it's coming out of committee next week. So I went down on Wednesday, called her on Thursday, it's coming out of committee next week. I said, but what about the testimony? You know, there was 4 or 5 local municipalities that showed up to fight this, but for the most part, it was silence. So it's coming out of committee next Wednesday. I said, okay. So I have an email list. So I sent out an email to my email list. My email list is not huge. A few hundred, maybe 500 people. But of those 500 people, most of the leaders in the Dallas-Fort Worth Metroplex and in the state of Texas are on my list. So many of them have 2,000 or 3,000 people on their email list. So it gets cascaded out and out and out. By Friday afternoon, you could not call the 9 members of that committee. Their phone lines were jammed because of all the people calling them to oppose this bill. So, they had a choice to make. I can pass this bill, or I can pass everything else that I want. But I've got thousands of people calling me, opposing this bill. I can't get anything else done. So they had to make a choice. I can pass this bill, or I can pass all the other bills. Guess what? The bill didn't pass. Will those things work here? I don't know. But they're examples of how you can make a difference. I'm going to be here for 3 days. I'm going to do 5 presentations. 5 different groups are hosting me. Are all those 5 groups together? Do they know one another? Hopefully so. If not, they need to. Together we bargain, divided we beg. And we know what's going to happen if we do nothing. This is a picture that I like. The caption on this picture is, "Sometimes the odds don't matter." When I began speaking out, they compared this to David versus Goliath. Little me against the big oil and gas industry. Anybody remember the David versus Goliath story in the Bible? Who won? Who won? We can't give up. We can't stick our head in the sand. We have to get involved, and we have to stay involved. If you win a short battle, the war's not over. That stuff's been down there for how long? Will it be down there 10 years from now? Yeah, it will. So just because you've won a short battle doesn't mean it's over. So you've got to stay involved, and you've got to stay vigilant. Most people call me when the drilling rig shows up. That's when they get on the internet and start searching, going, "Hey, what is going on?" It's too late. You have an opportunity that I didn't have. Get involved, stay involved, and don't give up, and don't quit. If you do nothing, then I just wasted my money coming out here. If you go home and watch American Idol tonight and forget all about this, my trip was wasted. Some of the folks coming up after me with the local group is going to tell you some of the specific things that you can do here in the state. And I'm going to answer questions that you guys pose of me. A lot of the local stuff would be better answered by some of the folks from here. And so they're going to be available to answer those questions that are specific to this area, specific to California. Together we bargain, divided we beg. If you don't remember anything about this presentation, you've got to remember that. Here's some contact information. It may be hard to see. It's been pointed out that my website is severely outdated. I have a daughter that's almost 2 years old now, and she's not mentioned on my website. So please forgive me for that. I also have some business cards that I will happily share with you in the future if I can be of any help. I certainly offer that up to you. Thank you very much, and I guess now we'll answer some questions. strangely enough, there is a close friend of mine that lives in Pennsylvania, and all of their information was sealed when the non-disclosure agreement was signed. And it was sued, the courts were sued by one of the local newspapers, and they had to release everything. It was the Range Resources, the Hallowich case in Washington County, Pennsylvania. And so the courts have ruled that that information was relevant and was releasable. So everything that was previously sealed when the non-disclosure agreement was signed was then released, and that information is publicly available now, and it's been published on many websites. That's where the information came out about them requiring the children to be gagged, the small children. I don't know if you remember seeing the media coverage on that, but that information came from that lawsuit. So I'm not a lawyer, but I can tell you that did happen.
Considering our economy is heavily reliant on agriculture, how could fracking impact agriculture in our region?
Well, the area that Dish is in was a predominantly agricultural area. That whole area is. Right now, there is very little commercial agriculture that goes on in the area where Dish used to, in that general area of the Barnett Shale. So it has certainly impacted. I mean, if you just look at the pictures from the air, how much land scarring goes on, that's going to be significant. And this is going on here. It's going on here now. Over in the valley, when me and John went over there was almond orchards that were having acres taken from them to put in pad sites. So it's certainly going to affect that. Oh, how you guys doing with water too? How's that going here? Isn't it like the worst drought ever? Yeah, all of this activity, whether they're fracking or not, is very water intensive. So that water is removed from the ecological system forever, or we hope that it is, because if it isn't, it's going to contaminate a lot more. So absolutely it's going to affect agriculture. Think it's going to affect tourism? You guys are right on the ocean, man. This is a beautiful place. How many people want to come and bring their families to the middle of a gas field? It's strange. In the Dallas-Fort Worth area, everybody who works in the oil and gas industry, they all live in Plano, which is out of the shale, which there's no drilling there. They live in Allen. Several of them live in my neighborhood now. No oil and gas activity over where I live.
Given that we have Measure P on our ballot in November, Calvin, do you see any pattern of what oil company strategies we might see before the election?
Well, they're going to call you un-American because you don't want to get our own energy. You want to leave us dependent on foreign oil. So they're going to say that. They're going to bring that argument up, and that argument's going to resonate with people. When this all began, it was hard for me. I was a lifelong Republican. I was a lifelong hardcore Republican. It was hard for me to speak out against the oil and gas industry because there was just something that made it feel wrong. And they're going to try and resonate that during your battle. To try and get people to come out and vote, they're going to try and use that. So, what happened to me? What happened to Tim Ruggiero? What happened to John Fenton? in Wyoming? What happened to the people in Dimock, Pennsylvania? We went out, we spent our life savings, we built our dream, and our dream was taken from us. That is un-American. But they will try and play that card with you during this ballot initiative. Another thing that they're going to bring up over and over and over again, and your local public officials need to listen to this: jobs, jobs, jobs. They're going to bring jobs and jobs and jobs. Everybody's just going to get fat, dumb, and happy. Everybody who wants to work will be able to work. Any of you. I mean, I'm sure that you're a certified pipeline welder. I'm sure that you've drilled wells. I bet you've worked on a frac crew. So when those jobs come, guess who's going to get them? Texans. Get used to Texas plates. Get used to your RV parks being full of Texans, because that's who's going to be working. The locals, you'll be driving a water truck. You'll be driving a tractor, building a pad site. If you guys stir up enough trouble, they might even hire some locals for security for the sites. There may be a few that gets on with a drilling company. But predominantly, the labor is going to be imported from somewhere else. It may not be from Texas. Maybe from Oklahoma, maybe from New Mexico, maybe from Louisiana, maybe from Bakersfield. But it's going to be somebody who's got experience doing that. So there's not going to be this huge influx of jobs. The people that are out here in this library on the computers trying to find a job, they'll still be out there trying to find a job. Might be an uptick at the restaurant or something like that of a little business. But this ain't going to be some huge economic windfall that everybody's going to notice. People have often, when you come out and you talk and people come up afterwards and they say, Calvin, I don't believe you. I give them a business card and I say, you call me when it happens. They always call. Or they always see me at the next presentation. They say, yep, you were right. The way you said it was going to happen, it happened.
So you can look on your Google map and see where the drill pads are. But then how do you know when the wells will be used for fracking?
In our area, all the wells are fracked. That's a given. They have to be fracked. It's the only way they produce. Here, maybe they will, maybe they won't. Do you know? Your state regulatory agency doesn't even know. John has put together some pretty comprehensive maps of all the wells that have been fracked in your state. And a lot of it was voluntary information that was voluntarily given. Your state regulatory agency didn't even know that. They don't even know what wells have been fracked. So are they going to frack here? They're probably telling you they won't, because that's the hot button topic. Because they think if you say, oh, well, they're not going to be fracking here, so it's not that big a deal. It makes it seem less invasive. But how do you know? You won't know till it's too late. And don't depend on your state regulatory agency. We were out here in Ojai. I'm never going to pronounce it. I'm from Texas. Okay, come on. And we had our camera, and we had permission from the property owner to be out there doing some of our filming. So there was a crew out there working. Your regulatory agency was out there. You never see that in Texas. Absolutely never see somebody from the Railroad Commission actually on a well site. They're in their office surfing the internet or something. They're not going to be out actually doing inspections. So I was thinking, wow. So we go on about our business. Well, some chubby little fellow walks up to us, starts asking us a bunch of questions. What are you doing on site? Where's your hard hat? How come you don't have safety glasses? I'm like, who are you? I'm Lance Blevins from the department. Got his business card. I'm Lance Blevins from the State of California Department of Conservation, Division of Oil and Gas and Geothermal Resources. So I said, I don't have a hard hat on because there ain't a sign that says I have to have a hard hat on. And if I should have a hard hat on, then I'm going to be pretty upset because there ain't a sign telling me I got to have a hard hat on. He was trying to throw us off the site. The industry sent him down there to throw us off the site. We told him to go away. He left. That is what is protecting you. Who are they really protecting? Who are they really working for? Industry. You know, you see a lot of movement back and forth from the industry to the regulatory agencies. I'm pretty sure you ain't got to worry about that with Lance. Pretty sure the industry ain't going to pick that one up. He's all yours.
More than fracking in our area, it's the steaming, high pressure steam to loosen up the oil. The question was what's in the steam, but the rest of the question I think is, well, what are the, they're not a bunch of chemicals like used in fracking, but what are the potential downsides or impacts on the community with steaming?
There is a significant amount of chemicals that come back up with the product. So there's a significant amount of chemicals that are going to come up. If you're using steam, you're going to use a significant amount of water. Again, you're in an area where you're in a drought. You've been in the worst drought forever. So it's certainly going to be an impact.
Calvin, most of the water they'll tell you that they're using is produced water, so it's this briny stuff that's thousands of feet underground, so not to worry about it.
You can always tell when somebody from the oil and gas industry is either lying or telling you a half-truth. Their mouths are moving. So they will tell you whatever they have to tell you to get the camel's nose in the tent. They never tell you how much water is really going to be used. They never tell you how many wells are really going to be drilled. They're never going to tell you how many jobs are really going to be created. Because if they did, you'd all say, hell no. So they're going to downplay the water use, they're going to downplay the number of wells, and they're going to overplay the number of jobs. And if they think that fracking is the hot button, they'll say we're not going to do that. We're not fracking here. How will you know?
Can you give a list of other movies? You mentioned Gasland and Gasland 2, other movies that cover this topic, like Aaron Brockovich, Broken Promised Land or something?
Promised Land didn't really touch on this, although some in the environmental community didn't like Promised Land. I thought Promised Land was pretty accurate. I mean, I went to places in Pennsylvania. We've done a lot of work up there, and the farms that they were going up to was just like the farms that we were going to. Unfortunately, when we were going to them, it was because their water was contaminated, and we were doing testing. But I thought it was pretty accurate on the process. So you have Gasland, you have Gasland 2, you have Triple Divide, you have Backyard, which I just saw last night. There's a documentary that doesn't touch on the negative impacts. It just talks on energy in general. It's called Beyond the Light Switch. That was done by PBS. There's also Split Estate. Split Estate was a very good documentary. And there's new documentaries coming out all the time now. There's one that's currently being done by a group here in California that it talks about the misleading information that the industry puts out and the way that they attack someone like myself, that sort of stuff. That'll be coming out soon. So there's quite a few that are out there, and if there's some from your group who have seen others that I haven't seen, then feel free.
Another great film short, it's only about 25 minutes, it's Backyard. You can check that out. And then there's a new movie that will be released by the end of this year. It's called No Country, No More, which is, that one is based out of the Balkan in North Dakota.
Okay,
Thank
can I ask how many people have not seen Erin Brockovich? How many people have not seen Erin Brockovich?
How many people have not seen Erin Brockovich?
Does anybody actually remember what the source of the contamination in Erin Brockovich was? It was a natural gas compression station. So it,
What amazed me was the woman had cancer and her kids, and she still didn't move.
unfortunately,
Or a lot of them died.
unfortunately, I've seen a lot of people who really feel like they just don't have that option. I mean, if I moved 25 miles, I could still keep the same job. We could still maintain the same friends. We actually went to the same church for a couple of years. So we were fortunate. You live in some place like the Marcellus Shale, you're moving out of state. You're not going to be able to move 25 miles off the road and be safe. These people have grown up here. They've lived their entire lives there. A lot of people, you get a home that's you've purchased that's lost all of its value. If you move out of that, you're in the street. You can't just move somewhere else because you've still got this. So some people just don't have that option.
What would you say to an elected official of a city or a community that was contemplating rezoning ag land to permit fracking or acidization or steam injection?
I'm not going to tell you to do this or not to do this. I'm going to tell you what happens when you do this. You need to make your own decision on that. Once it's done, it can't be undone. The damage is going to be done once it's done. If they said, never again will we drill a well in the Barnett Shale, there would still be people that were impacted. There would still be people that are suffering. That's forever. As a local official, you were elected to protect your citizens. I was terrified that there would be a child that would get leukemia in Dish. We had a huge epidemic in Flower Mound, Texas, just to the east of Dish. I was terrified that that would happen on my watch while I was a public official. You got to wake up in the morning and look yourself in the mirror. If you approve it, it's your legacy. It's your legacy that you move on. Somebody's kid comes up with leukemia. Whose hands are the blood on?
Thank you. So one of Calvin's themes was you got to get involved. Well, how do you do that? So there's 3 ways I'll mention right now. One is, well, sign in, give us your email address. We send action alerts out, maybe sometimes a couple in a week, sometimes just a couple in a month. But when there are important issues dealing with all the things that SBCAN deals with, and we're countywide, we're concerned about affordable housing, the environment generally, efficient transportation, protecting ag land. So it's pretty broad, and we're not on top of every piece of legislation in the State House. But as things come to our attention, and our members or my board, and I've got a board of a dozen members, when people bring the things to us, we get them in the action alerts and get the word out so that you can be informed. So I'd love for anybody that isn't already a member to join. We have some brochures by the door, and we'd love you to be a member. But and it doesn't have to be expensive. You can join for $1, or you can get on our action alert mailing list for free. And we really want to be in touch with people. But of course, we love to have members that pay a chunk of dues. And then I mentioned earlier, if you're in Santa Maria, especially if you live in the Westgate areas or out in that part of town near Area 9, and you're concerned about the potential for oil development there, you need to talk to Walter Taylor. You need to get involved with Soda 9, and Walter has these packets available that has shale field stories, as I mentioned at the outset, and a number of other things in there. And then there's the Santa Barbara Water Guardians I mentioned, and Rebecca Clausen is here. She represents them, and they're the promoters of the Measure P. There's a sign-in sheet back there. That's how you get involved with them. And there are probably any number of other ways. I know my Vice President, Jerry Connor's here, and he'll tell you, well, you need to get in the Sierra Club and get a lot of good information coming from them. So on the topic of getting involved, I saw a couple of pointing and hands. Okay, go ahead.
I just have a quick question. Does your group get involved in the Napomo Mesa area with the Phillips 66,
Okay,
the rail
got it.
spur situation, the Oceana Dunes, possible fracking? Is there a contact that you have?
So the question is about the Phillips refinery in the Pomo area, and are we involved in that? We are the Santa Barbara County Action Network, and mostly we deal with stuff that's inside the county, but the impacts of that affect our county, and we are talking to our counterparts over there, and we've had it on our board agendas, and we're not averse to talking about that and talking with others up and down the state who are concerned about the increased rail shipments coming from North Dakota with the highly flammable, explosive Bakken crude. Thank you. Rebecca, is there anything else that you wanted to say besides the sign-in sheet and so forth? If you do, we've got a couple of minutes. Come on. And while you're coming up, Bill Deneen wanted to know, should state parks be promoting driving on the Oceano Beach as a type of recreation? You probably don't know the answer to that. And I would say no. But it's not part of the topic of the whole deal today. But okay, you can answer this one. Should Wendy be the governor of Texas?
I'm no longer a Republican, but I'm also not a Democrat. I'm an independent. When Wendy was a state senator, when she was a freshman senator, she called me, she sat down and met with me before my senator actually sat down and met with me. But I'm not so certain that she's going to do our best interest in the future. So I am not going to support Wendy Davis for governor of Texas.
All right. And now, the SBCAN board did take a position in support of Measure P. And so I just want to give a minute for Rebecca to give you whatever other information she wants to about how you can get involved in that.
Thank you, Ken. Thank you, Calvin. Great presentation. So I'm Becca Clausen with the Santa Barbara County Water Guardians. Raise your hand if you have heard of Measure P or if you helped gather signatures to get it on the ballot. Excellent. Great work, everybody. So we have a really exciting opportunity here, right here in Santa Barbara County. We have good warning from people like Calvin telling us what atrocities have happened in other places, and now is our time to head this stuff off. Fracking has happened in Santa Barbara County. It's happening in Ventura County right now as we speak. It's happened off our shores without permission, without proper oversight, and it could happen here again. And that is exactly why we need Measure P passed today. We have 3.5 months or so until Election Day. We need all the help we can get. We need everybody to be engaged, fight hard. Nothing sends a clearer signal to the governor than a community like ours banding together to take action and get an initiative passed to say, we're not going to allow these extreme extraction techniques in our county. So I hope that you sign in on our yellow sheet back there. You can also go to our website, waterguardians.org, and sign up to volunteer there. Thank you so much.
So okay. I can't name them right now. Sierra Club is who I've talked to, Sierra Club reps up there. There isn't a countywide action network, just exactly like ours. No. I want to give Calvin the last word. I want to thank all of you for turning out, and Calvin, just see if he has another remark or two. Thank you.
I'm just, last night I spoke in San Diego, and the room was packed, and they don't even have activities going on there. And when we got here today, I was told this is the middle of the day, maybe a dozen people. This room is packed. I'm honored that everybody came out and watched me, and they're waving the Shellfield stories in the back, so I encourage everybody to pick up one of those. But thank you so much for coming out and honoring me with your afternoon. Thank you.
Good job.
Thank you.
How can we get people off their butts and do these things? Because all this entertainment you see on TV, that's what they're doing.
That is exactly what they're doing, and I wish I had an answer for that. I'm trying to do that. That's the whole reason that I came out here, was more of a call to action than it was to simply tell my story. And so,
Good job.
Calvin, Phelan Megalier.